There are no two biblical characters more closely associated with wickedness than Jezebel and Judas. They have become such persistent icons of wickedness and betrayal for over 2,000 years. The tale of Judas, the disciple who betrayed Jesus for 30 pieces of silver, is well known in the Bible, but that of Jezebel's has not much popularity. This 9th century BC pagan queen of Israel has become the epitome of an evil woman in literature, art, film, sermons, and music. However, everyone save the most dedicated Bible readers probably doesn't know the details of her life as they are described in 1 and 2 Kings. In today's video, we'll examine how Israelite Queen Jezebel grew to be such a dreadful and notorious person, along with the spine-tingling circumstances surrounding her death. Let's dive in. With its intrigue, sexual immorality, ruthlessness, and murder, Jezebel's story is a rich stew of the historical events, allegorical interpretation, and metaphorical license that make many of the Old Testament's biographical tales such fascinating to read. At the climax of her long struggle to bring pagan worship to the kingdom of Israel, where the Hebrew God Yahweh is the only God, Queen Jezebel pays the ultimate price. To contemporary authors, Jezebel is one of the most fascinating women in the scriptures, a bloody yet strong-willed, politically astute, and courageous woman. A Phoenician princess who worships Baal, the pagan god of fertility, Jezebel marries King Ahab of the northern kingdom of Israel. She convinces him to tolerate her new faith, then becomes entwined in the brutal religious war that ends in her death. After her marriage to King Ahab, Jezebel emerges as the power behind the throne. Their union represents a political alliance, bringing advantages to both nations. It is also an opportunity for Jezebel to foster the spread of her Baal religion, with its many gods, ritual sects, and temple prostitutes. She hates the monotheistic Hebrew religion, and when she becomes queen, Israelites have already begun worshiping alien idols. Under his wife's malevolent influence, King Ahab protects and encourages pagan rituals, prompting Yahweh to inflict a 3-year drought in a land where people are spurning him. Seizing the initiative, Jezebel imports 450 priests of Baal from her native Phoenicia and has many of Yahweh's prophets murdered. To Jews, Baal worship was the worst sin against God, akin to today's Christians embracing Satan. Some interpreters see Jezebel as commendably faithful to her pagan religion, but the writer of the Book of Kings portrays her as a dangerous apostate. To settle the question of who is supreme, Yahweh or Baal, the prophet Elijah devises a contest on Mount Carmel. The true God is the one who can intervene supernaturally to put a sacrificial bull on fire and destroy it. All day long, Jezebel's 450 prophets performed a hopping dance around the altar, sometimes mutilating themselves with swords and lances, but nothing happened. Elijah then has his turn to pray to one true God of Israel, and he answers right away. The wood, the stones, the ground, and the burned sacrifice were all consumed by fire that fell from the God of Israel. Upon seeing this, all the people exclaimed, "The Lord alone is God," and threw themselves on their faces. After Elijah kills the pagan prophets in retaliation for Jezebel's murder of God's prophets, God rewards him by putting an end to Israel's drought. Victorious Elijah was not generous regarding the lives of the pagan prophets. The dice are now cast between the victorious prophet and the humiliated queen. After her followers were killed, she sent a vicious message to Elijah threatening his destruction, prompting him to flee to safety. The action moves to the royal palace, where Jezebel's husband is lusting after Naboth's vineyard, which he wants to use for a garden. Naboth had a vineyard in Jezreel that was adjacent to Ahab's palace. Inquiring about the possibility of purchasing the vineyard to turn it into a vegetable or herb garden, Ahab approached Naboth. Naboth declined as the property belonged to his ancestors. According to some theologians, Naboth was also afraid of breaking the Mosaic rule, which prohibited the permanent sale of inheritance. Ahab was so concerned about not being able to take land from Naboth for himself that he refused to eat. As soon as Jezebel discovered her husband's concerns, as usual, she chose to use her power to assist him. As Jezebel reminds Ahab of his kingly might, she establishes her supremacy in the kingdom. 1 Kings 21, 7 NLT. "Are you the king of Israel or not?" Jezebel demanded. "Get up and eat something and don't worry about it. I'll get you Naboth's vineyard." To remedy the matter, Jezebel wrote a letter to the elders and nobles of Jezreel on Ahab's behalf. The letter urged the nobles and elders to call a holy fast, glorify Naboth, and present 2 witnesses to falsely accuse Naboth of cursing the king and God. They were then to stone Naboth outside the city to death. Bible scholars think that to prevent suspicions of foul play among the people, these instructions purposefully followed the biblical principles for criminal justice. Nevertheless, Jezebel refers to the 2 witnesses as sons of Belial, which would characterize their readiness to go to whatever lengths to get payment. The plot was successfully executed, as stray dogs were seen licking Naboth's body. It seems that Naboth's sons died along with their father, most likely executed shortly after on the king's or Jezebel's orders, so they could not inherit the vineyard. 2 Kings 9:25, 26 NLT. Jehu said to Bidkar, his officer, "Throw him into the plot of land that belonged to Naboth of Jezreel. Do you remember when you and I were riding along behind his father Ahab? The Lord pronounced this message against him. I solemnly swear that I will repay him here on this plot of land, says the Lord, for the murder of Naboth and his sons that I saw yesterday. So throw him out on Naboth's property, just as the Lord said." In the end, it was determined that either Jezebel or Ahab was to blame for Naboth's son's death, since Ahab refused to pay for Naboth's vineyard and received it as a gift from his wife, without inquiring as to how Naboth passed away or offering to make any reparations. Jezebel informed Ahab that he could have possession of the vineyard after the execution of Naboth and his sons. Christians may learn from this parable that the ruler must uphold families' property rights. Rabbinic tradition states that the false spirit that was allowed to lead Ahab to his death was Naboth's soul. Jezebel's evil scheme is successful, but the inevitable conclusion arrives soon after. Elijah the prophet was sent by God to warn King Ahab that he would face consequences. 1 Kings 21:17, 1923 KJV. And the word of the Lord came to Elijah the Tishbite, saying, "Arise, go down to meet Ahab king of Israel, which is in Samaria. Behold, he is in the vineyard of Naboth, whither he is gone down to possess it. And thou shalt speak unto him, saying, Thus saith the Lord, Hast thou killed and also taken possession? And thou shalt speak unto him, saying, Thus saith the Lord, In the place where dogs licked the blood of Naboth shall dogs lick thy blood, even thine. And of Jezebel also spake the Lord, saying, The dogs shall eat Jezebel by the wall of Jezreel." Elijah obediently informs the king of God's prophecy, and it was via the hands of Jehu, a military leader anointed to succeed as the next king of Israel. Elisha gives Jehu the command to eliminate the other members of the royal family after Ahab's death. Jehu faces up against Joram, Jezebel's son, on the battlefield. 2 Kings 9:21, 25 NLT. "Quick, get my chariot ready," King Joram commanded. Then King Joram of Israel and King Ahaziah of Judah rode out in their chariots to meet Jehu. They met him at the plot of land that had belonged to Naboth of Jezreel. King Joram demanded, "Do you come in peace, Jehu?" Jehu replied, "How can there be peace as long as the idolatry and witchcraft of your mother Jezebel are all around us?" Then King Joram turned the horses around and fled, shouting to King Ahaziah, "Treason, Ahaziah!" But Jehu drew his bow and shot Joram between the shoulders. The arrow pierced his heart, and he sank down dead in his chariot. Jehu said to Bidkar, his officer, "Throw him into the plot of land that belonged to Naboth of Jezreel." When Jezebel learned that her son and husband had both passed away, she realized that her destiny had been predetermined. Brave and bold, Jezebel does not display any fear. Instead, she bravely and calmly gets ready for what is about to happen. She painted her eyes and accessorized her head, clearly trying to entice Jehu. However, Jeremiah and Ezekiel foretold that Israel and Judah's future enemies would not be fooled by similar behavior, and Jehu did not fall for it. Jeremiah 4:30 MSG. "And you, what do you think you're up to? Dressing up in party clothes, decking yourselves out in jewelry, putting on lipstick and rouge and mascara. Your primping goes for nothing. You're not going to seduce anyone. They're out to kill you." Jehu ordered Jezebel to be thrown down from the wall, and everything God said about her death was fulfilled. 2 Kings 9:32-37, KJV. With a raised face toward the glass, he said, "Who is on my side? Whom?" And 2 or 3 eunuchs were staring out at him. "Throw her down," he then ordered. They then flung her on the ground, splattering some of her blood over the wall and the horses, and he trampled her underfoot. After entering, he ate and drank before telling everyone to go visit the cursed lady and bury her, since she was the king's daughter. When they arrived to bury her, All that was left of her was her head, feet, and hand palms. Thus they returned and informed him. And he declared, "This is the word of the Lord, spoken by his servant Elijah the Tishbite. Dogs in the portion of Jezreel will consume Jezebel's flesh, and her corpse will be as dung on the face of the field, so that no one will say, 'This is Jezebel.'" Despite the harshness of this punishment, we must remember how the Bible assesses the character and actions of Ahab and Jezebel. God's prophets were ruthlessly killed by Jezebel, who also attempted to have Elijah killed. You will agree with me that God was avenging the blood of his prophet that was shed by this wicked couple. God will punish the wicked, and that is something we should constantly keep in mind. Because Jezebel was such an evil character, Christ used her name to represent the spiritual corruption that took place in the Thyatira church during John's revelation. Revelation 2:20 KJV. "Notwithstanding I have a few things against thee, because thou sufferest that woman Jezebel, which calleth herself a prophetess, to teach and to seduce my servants to commit fornication, and to eat things sacrificed unto idols." Jezebel. She uses her self-appointed position to persuade church members to sin. This was comparable to the Old Testament Jezebel who encouraged the Israelites to become wicked and worship Baal. This reminds us of the ancient impudent Jezebel, who refused to bow down to God until her horrific death. If the Jezebel of Revelation 2 is a fictional character, then she may represent the spiritual idolatry practiced by church members influenced by the worldly customs of Thyatira. In any event, Christ's teaching makes it clear that she is not to be accepted. Similar to the Old Testament Jezebel, this Jezebel meets a horrific end, teaching Christians to resist her alluring influence inside the church. If this video has blessed you, we would like to hear from you. Please share your testimonies of how God answered your prayers. Please click the subscribe buttons. By doing this, you help our ministry reach more people. Remember to activate the notification bell so you may be informed when we upload new videos. Thank you for watching. God bless you. See you in the next videos.